Howdy doody, my name is Susie, and today I thought I would share with you how I'm making some reusable mop heads for different types of mops. And I'm going to be making 3 different types, just using old towels, a felted sweater or sweater that's shrunken, some scrap pieces of fabric. And the 3 mop heads I'm going to be making is, first I'm going to be making a mop head that's like this. And this is for my steam cleaner mop. So that's what it looks like. And this is actually the one that I've already made. We're also going to be making a mop head for, this is my spray on mop for the floor, hardwood floor. And this one has velcro on the bottom. So we're going to be making a reusable pad that will adhere to the velcro. And then the third mop head that we're going to be making, which I don't have the mop with me, but it's one of these where your mop head folds, you insert it, and then it snaps into position. So we're going to be making a mop head that folds as well. So in terms of material for this project, I'm just going to be using some old towels. This one I've already chopped up. It was full of holes, but it's got good absorption. I'm also using cotton towels, and you want to be using cotton material because it's going to be the most absorbent and easiest for you to wash anymore. I'm also going to be reusing some old hand towels or dish towels, which are thinner. I'm going to be using, this is a woolen sweater, merino wool that shrunk, and it is felted. And I'm going to be using this for my Velcro mop, and I'll show you that in a minute. I've also got some scrap cotton, which I'm going to be needing for this mop. And I've got a little bit of mesh, and I'll show you what that's for later. So basically, those are the materials I'm going to be using. And each mop is a little bit different, but I'm also going to be needing some bias tape. And this is 1/2 inch, and bias tape is just some fabric that's folded into a 1/2 inch. And I'm also going to need some elastic. And this is a 1 inch elastic band, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that for the steam cleaner. So for all of these projects, we're going to be recycling our old towels, old dish towels, old sweater, a little bit of cotton, and this is really depending on which style of mop head you're going to be using. We're going to need a measuring tape, some pins. We're going to need a ruler and some wrapping paper or packing paper or some sort of paper to create your template, a pen, some scissors, and I've also got here, and this is optional, but I've got a cat brush that I bought from the dollar store, which is just meant for fabric, and I'm going to actually comb out the felt if need be. And I've also got just a lint brush, which is also going to just help clean up some of all the little shreds or the little pieces that are going to come off your towel. And then of course we're going to need a sewing machine. So now the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be making our template. I'm going to start off by making this Velcro pad. So I've made one which is just the felted side with nothing on it. And I've also made one that has Velcro on it. Both work well, both adhere very well. What we're going to have to do is create our pattern, and if you don't have a piece of paper that's long enough, I just took 2 letter-size papers and put them together and taped them like this. And then I took my existing pad, placed it, and traced it, which gave me this. I took my pattern and just centered it over my mop. I folded it back in half, And then by folding it back, I was able to mark the lines where the Velcro are going to go and how far. So now I've got my pattern, and there's no seam allowance because we're creating a completely flat pad. That was my pattern, and I cut out my terry cloth. But now I'm going to need, for the other side, this felted sweater, which adheres to the Velcro. And before you go ahead and use your felted sweaters, which are actually, they're super absorbent, they stick to the Velcro, and they're really nice to use on the floor. To test to see if it would actually work. And the Velcro on the bottom of the mop is going to be the rigid Velcro. The Velcro on the back of the pad is going to be the soft Velcro. But for this one, I'm not using Velcro at all. So I'm just laying it on my sweater, and then I'm picking it up. So I know that it's sticking to it. Now, if your felted sweater doesn't actually stick to the mop, then you have the option of adding the soft Velcro strips to the back, which is what I did on this one. So then I went ahead, laid my pattern down, cut out my felted sweater. So now I've got my towel on one side and my felted sweater on the other side. And what I did was I pinned the two all the way around and pinned it all in place. And then I started to just do a straight stitch all the way around just to hold the two pieces in place. And I did it with the felt side down, sewing on the top of the terry cloth. And you have to kind of push this along. So I did one straight stitch all the way around, and then I went back and did a zigzag all the way around. And that basically is just sealing off the edges. I came back in and trimmed off all those little bits and pieces. And I laid it down as flat as possible. Now, I forgot to mention that for all of these, I did a good press with the iron. Of both pieces together before I sewed anything together. So that is really the key. Press out all these pieces and pin them together because you will get a more accurate measurement without having the fabric actually move and stretch out of place. So make sure that you iron the two together. Then you can add your single stitch all the way around. That I've got my straight stitch all the way around, now I'm going to go over this and zigzag. After the two pieces are secured, I came back and did a zigzag all the way around on both sides. My presser foot, so it's lined up with the fabric. You can see it's just a wide zigzag, but it's much easier to finish the seam this way. And you're not pulling on the felt or the wool on the back. And I can leave it like this, or I can take my 1-inch bias that I've made and go all the way around and finish it off with a nice edge. So then I had to hold it taut and run it under the machine with the felt side down. And then I did it also on either side. Now, either side, I ran that line closer to the edge because you want to keep the edge fairly firm. It gives it some structure so that you can mop and it will not roll. I'm going to start right in the middle, just eyeball it. We're doing a straight stitch. Gonna make that a little bit narrower, and this time with the straight stitch, I'm going to be pushing the fabric on both sides. So I'm just keeping it nice and taut. Now, if you don't sew these 3 ribs down the center, then your mop is going to roll when you're pushing it back and forth. So it's really important that you stitch it 3 times in the middle to create this. So now you can see that it holds quite well just with the felt. And actually, when you're mopping and doing it this way, it really holds it in place. If you didn't do the 3 stitches along the center, the sides would tend to roll. So that's the first one. The second one, for the Velcro, I did it exactly the same way as I did this, but I did add some bias on the outside, and then I added my Velcro on the back. And this is the soft Velcro. There's one longer, one shorter. So when you look at the mop, the longer and shorter, and then you're just putting it in the middle and eyeballing it, and you can see it holds on really well, and you can mop really well. Now, the other reason that I used the felted sweater and the nice thick terry cloth is because it creates a nice thick pad. And if you have textured floors, and I've got vinyl flooring, but there is texture to it, so there's little grooves. This additional cushioned pad really helps to get into those grooves, and I think helps to clean the floor much better than the original pad that I bought with the mop. This is the Velcro mop. You can see it cleans well and doesn't move. I'll attach this template to this video just in case someone has the same mop and they want to use this pattern. Now, the next mop head I'm going to be making is the folding mop. Now for the folding mop, pattern like this. And then for the side pieces, so for the side pieces, I cut out a pattern, you can see. And I cut it right to size. And you can see if I lay down my pattern, this little piece is going to fit right in here, so I can fold over the edges like this. So those are my 2 pattern pieces. And this mop is fairly thin. It's only 1 layer. So I'm going to use a nice thick towel. And wherever you can cut but leave a finished edge, that definitely is helpful. And I fold it over the edges. I placed it by eye in the middle, and then I use the pattern to guide my fold. So I can slip out my pattern, and I've got my mop fold, doing a mock up, but in order to finish off the edges like we have here, I'm going to be using that bias tape all the way around. So I'm going to need a piece of bias tape for the top. I'm going to need a piece of bias tape for the bottom. And I always make it just a little tiny bit longer, and then I can trim it off at the end. And then I'm going to take my other template, and I'm going to make sure that it fits right between my 2 creases. And I want to make sure that this opening from here to here is exact same size as this opening from here to here, so that the mop can slip in comfortably. So I need an opening of 4 inches. I've got more than 4 inches. I've got 4.5 inches, but that's going to be fine because by the time we sew all this together, it may shrink a little bit. Now for the inside of this, while this doesn't have a cover, this is fairly rigid, so it has some body. So I took some scrap cotton, and this is a bit of a thicker cotton. I used my pattern that I folded back the edges, used that to cut an inside piece. This is going to fit right in the middle, and I'm going to be able to fold it on the top, and I'm going to be able to fold it on the bottom. And I'm also going to do those 3 seams all the way down, which is going to give this a little bit more structure, along with the bias is also going to give it a little bit more structure to keep that nice and flat. Now that I've done that, I cut out my side pieces. I use my pattern to cut out my side pieces. And again, I'm just doing a dry run. My side pieces are going to fit, one on either side. And then I'm going to need some bias. To finish off that edge, like this. And I'm going to cut a bias on the other side to finish off the other edge. And that's going to fit like this. Bias tape on top and bias tape on the bottom. And this is the way that we are going to sew it. I'm going to dismantle. Take that out and take this out. My 2 side pieces. I'm going to leave this center piece in place. And so now that I've got this cotton centered in the middle, I'm going to pin it in place. So now that I've got it pinned in place, I'm going to run a seam all the way around. I'm going to do 2 lines down the center. I'm going to zigzag the edges to lock them. And then I'm going to add my bias to either side. Now my light on my machine went out and I'm just waiting for the new one to arrive, but it hasn't yet. But I've got some extra light so I can see. So all I'm going to do is a straight stitch all the way around. And I'm just running this presser foot right along this line. I'm using it as my guide. So now I've gone all the way around, and I'm actually not going to zigzag the edge because I'm going to be using the bias tape. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that since the other side is already finished. But now what I wanna do is I wanna run 3 lines, 1 down the center and 1 on either side. So I'm just going to eyeball the center. And for this, you want to keep your fabric taut on both sides. And now we're going to do 1 on either side, and I'm going to draw it a little bit closer to the edge than the center. Three lines, and you can see how that really stiffens this up. So it becomes a little bit a nicer pad. And now I'm going to add the bias to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to add the bias. I'm just adding a pin to start it off. And then I'm just going to very slowly open it up, fit it over, and just run a straight seam. So you've got the bias on one side. And what we're going to do is fold this over. So you don't have to use the bias, but you can see that by adding this bias, we're really creating some rigidity, which is going to help keep this in place when you're mopping. So now we've got the bias on both sides. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the two little side panels, and I'm going to add the bias to the straight line. So I've got the bias here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it to the inside. This is going to close over like this, and this is going to close over like that. Now here, I seem to have pushed the fabric out the back, so it's not a straight angle. And just cut it straight. And this side's pretty good. And now I'm going to line this up, and I'm going to sew along the top, the side, and the bottom, leaving this pocket open because that's where my mop head is going to go. So I've pinned it in place, and I'm going to sew along here, down here, and along here. But first I'm going to do the other one. So I'm going to pin this side. I'm going to, again, sew the three sides. So now I've sewn all the way around, and you can see I've just used the side of the presser foot, and I want to make sure that this pocket is going to be at least 4 inches opening. So the next thing I'm going to do is, so I'm going to put my pressure foot, again, I'm just going to run the edge of the fabric with the edge of my presser foot, and I'm going to change this to a zigzag, and I've got the right length. Okay. I'm just going to zigzag it as close to the edge as I can. Zigzag, you can see it better here. Zigzag the other side. So now that I've finished off the two raw edges, the only thing left to do is fold this over, and I'm going to do a straight stitch, but because this is so thick, I'm going to increase the length of the stitch. What we want to make sure is that this opening is 4 inches. So I've got about 4 1/4 inches, which is fine. It just gives me extra little tiny bit of room to slip that mop head in. So I'm going to put it on a straight stitch, and I'm going to set it at 3, and I'm going to see if this is long enough. There's one side. You can see how it really does create more of a structure. So the mop will go in folded like this, and will open up like that. If we compare it to the original, and in terms of thickness, you can see that the one we've made is a little bit thicker, which is great because one of my main complaints about this one, I always lined the center with a folded up t-shirt because I didn't feel like it was really making enough contact with the floor, but I know that this will. Done. The old steamer mop, you can see that it has an elastic on the top, and it's got a straight edge bias on the bottom, and it has a little pocket on the inside where you can add, actually these come with a tab which you can add some essential oil, and as you steam the floor you get a beautiful fragrance. So I'm going to be replicating this pocket, and I'm just going to be using some cotton pads to insert it and then add my essential oils. Now for this, I'm going to need 2 types of material. I'm going to need the outside part which is a thick towel. And then I'm going to need an inside part, which is a very fine towel. So first I made my pattern. Now you can try and use your existing pad, but essentially I use my mop. So this is the pad that I've already made. And I'll show you, it comes off quite easily. You can see that I've added a little, I've used a dish towel on the inside, and I've used a towel on the outside, and I've used some mesh from a jacket to create my pocket on the inside. But basically, I took my mop and I put it on a piece of paper. And by taking my original cloth, when I turned it inside out, I saw the seam. So basically, I measured how much that edge was, and it's 2 inches. So I traced out the mop, and then I added 2 inches to the top. On the bottom, it was less. It was only 1 inch on the bottom. So I added about 1 inch on the bottom, but I flared it out to 2 inches. So I just cut out these corners on a 90-degree angle, and I made sure that it's 2 inches here and 2 inches on the side. So this is what my pattern looks like. So I've got an inner circle and an outer circle, or half moon. So now I have my pattern for this steamer, and there's actually 3 pieces. There's the thick towel, which is the outside piece, which is this, with the notches cut out on either side. And then there's an inside piece, which is going just in the middle. So it's just going in the middle. So this is really kind of our cushion in the middle of our pad, because we're going to fold this over, and this is going to be pulled by elastic. So this is the inside pad, this is the outside. And just stitch, I'm going to do a straight stitch and just sew it in the center of my pad. But before that, I'm going to add this little pocket. So I'm going to make this little pocket, which you can use, I used some netting from a jacket, but I'm just using cheesecloth here. And any material that you're going to use for the steamer has to be a natural material like cotton or the felt, because you're using steam. If you've got anything that's polyester or something that's not a natural material, the steam will melt it. Now, if you want to test if the fabric's going to withstand the steam of the steamer, then just use your iron. And that will tell you right away whether or not the steam, it's going to be safe and it's not going to melt. So like I said, I just made this little pocket, which is optional, but I think it's really nice because you can put your little drops of essential oil into your cotton pad. So now I'm going to do a straight stitch, and I'm going to stitch all of this all the way around in place. So I've sewn the middle piece in place, and the pocket is towards the flat part. Flat part, pocket. Flat part, pocket. And this is going to fold over. We're going to be adding the elastic band to the round part. We're going to be adding the bias to the end, bias and elastic. Now, in order to get the measurement for your elastic, I took the original pad, and then I took my measuring tape and I measured the elastic in its relaxed form without stretching, and it's 14 inches elastic, and I stretched it and stretched, I get 25. So I've got a 1 inch elastic, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it and I'm going to sew it to that edge. So I'm almost taking this elastic and I'm creating very similar to the bias tape. Now this elastic is meant for buttonholes. You can see all the holes. And I bought this because it's much easier to fold, but you could just use a regular elastic. Now, because I bought this different elastic, I don't know if this stretch equals this stretch. So the way to find out, remember I said that the elastic was 14 inches while it was relaxed. So this is 14 inches of the elastic relaxed. So now I pinned the elastic at 14 inches and stretched, I got 25 inches. So what I want to do is I'm going to hold the elastic at the 1. This is 25. So I'm going to take my pin where it was relaxed and I'm going to stretch it to 25. And that is really, really stretching it. So this elastic doesn't stretch as much as the original elastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 inch to the relaxed elastic. So instead of 14, I'm going to measure it at 15. So now I've got 15 inches in the relaxed. I'm going to grab it again and I'm going to stretch it to 25. I tried it at 15. I'm going to add 2 inches and I'm going to go to 16. Again, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to pull 16 relaxed inches to 25, and that feels comfortable. So this is it relaxed. This is it stretched. I'm not putting a ton of pressure on it. 16 relaxed is where I'm going to cut my elastic. And that's just one way for you to assess how much stretch you need or how much elastic you're going to need. So I'm just marking the center of this pattern, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the elastic band, just fold it over. I'm going to mark the center, and when I'm ready to sew, I'm going to match up the centers but start at the end. Now remember, we've cut out these notches, and these are on a 90-degree angle. Sewing it directly straight up and down to create that 90-degree angle. We're going to go in maybe 1/8 of an inch at the top and meet it at the corner, and that way it's going to create, so you can see that I've sewn it slightly angled. Not a big, huge angle. You can see here, it's just a little angle. So now, when you turn it inside out, it's like this. It's finished on the edge. So I've got my bias, and I've got my elastic, and I've marked the center of the pad. So you can see it's created this cupped effect. So this is probably the trickiest part. Now I'm going to just start with the elastic relaxed, and I'm just going to secure it in place. Do a little bit of a stretch, and I want to get that started because I need to hold the elastic in the back and in the front. Hold it in the back and the front. And then I just do little sections. I had to stretch that elastic. So if you're in doubt, just give yourself an extra inch of elastic, but no. Now I had to really stretch that elastic, but let's see how it fits. So here's our mop. I would say that that's a pretty good fit. It works great. And I can smell that peppermint. So you can see how the steamer is working. It's steaming and almost instantly drying it at the same time. So it looks like it got some dirt. It's definitely working. The steam is coming right through, and that's why you want the cotton. I don't know if you can see the steam, but it's definitely breathable and it's cleaning the floors. So now you can see that we've got all our mop heads, the steam clean. Remember to only use natural fiber so they don't melt. And these replacement pads, I believe I saw them for $34 for one or $40 for two. So that's quite expensive. Then you've got your Velcro mop that we've made with the felt. And this runs between $10 to $20 depending on the make. And the same with our folding mop. This runs between $10 to $15 for the replacements. But the great thing is that you can make these a little bit thicker. So like I mentioned, if you've got textured floors with grooves, the thicker these pads are, the easier it is to get into those grooves and really wash the floor. And you're making great use of just some old towels, old dish towels, and of course, shrunken sweaters. So I hope you found this video useful. If you try it and you like it, I hope you share it. If you'd like to see more content, I hope you subscribe. Until next time, happy sewing and happy cleaning.